welcome to today's lunchtime lesson. We're doing a focus today on linkers that we can use in our formal writing. So I'm going to be doing a few of these over the next few months. We are going to look at linkers for informal writing in a couple of weeks as well. Okay, but we're going to start with linkers for formal writing today. Obviously, there are lots more than the ones we're going to talk about today, but this is just a selection that I wanted to discuss. So the reason I want to focus on this is one of the biggest problems I normally see in my students' writing is that the linkers that are being used are not appropriate for the register that you're writing in, okay? And I find this in particular actually when people are writing in informal texts, you tend to see these formal linkers coming into formal texts, but equally quite often, it can work the other way as well, that people are using linkers which are too informal in their formal writing, or actually sometimes even too formal for their formal writing, yeah, which we're going to go into a bit more detail today. So it's really important being able to understand register and also tone, yeah? So these things are connected. We say this word register and we think of informal, neutral, formal, but tone is the other really important aspect to this, because some linkers will have a more academic tone, some of them will have a more business tone, some of them will have a more scientific tone, yeah? So understanding that aspect of the language is also really important for you to be able to produce better language in general. It's particularly important in writing more than speaking, because remember that when you're writing, there aren't any visual clues for your reader. So if you're speaking to me and you use an informal a very formal word when you're speaking informally, I have enough context to understand, you know, what you want to say or what you want to mean. And when you are writing, your audience does not have that information. And remember as well that you only get one chance when you're writing. So it's not like when you're speaking that you can correct yourself or rephrase things. Writing is, you know, one chance only. So it can also lower the quality of the language that you are producing in general. So if you're not using appropriate register and appropriate tone, it will make the writing that you are producing not as good as it could be. So we're going to, today, we're going to look at some commonly used and also very commonly misused formal linkers in writing. Now, I'm saying this word writing, okay, again, because this is really important. A lot of the ones we're going to look at today should not be used in your speaking, okay? So these are words that should be applied to your written English. If you're doing an exam in English, such as the IELTS exams or the Cambridge exams, this is going to be really key vocabulary for you. So make sure that you spend some time with this language, yeah? And if you look at the marking criteria, which I recommend for anyone doing an exam, always look at the marking criteria. It's always available online, especially for B2 levels and higher. You'll see that to get those like pass marks, it always asks you, it asks the candidate to produce a wide variety of cohesive devices. Okay, that's one of the things that it always says. So what that means is that you have to have a wide selection of linkers that you're using, and they have to be appropriate for what you're using too. Okay, so we need to know which are the appropriate ones for what we're producing, but we also need to make sure we understand how to use them and what function they are doing, because that's another mistake I quite often see, is that people might have a linker which is the correct register, but it's not actually being used in the right way. So we're going to look at selection today. I've got 8 linkers that we're going to have a look at. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot more than these, and in other sessions we'll have a look at some more, but I've chosen these because these are some of the ones that I tend to see either misused or not used enough or used too much, right? So these are ones that tend to cause common problems. So we're going to start, guys, with this word, furthermore. So here's an example sentence. He is old and unpopular. Furthermore, he has at best only 2 years of political life ahead of him. So we use furthermore to add things to your argument, okay? So it's a linker of addition. And that means that you're going to use it when you want to develop your ideas or develop your topic sentence. Now, this is really important. Furthermore is an academic word. Yeah. So that means furthermore is a fantastic choice that you would bring into your essay writing, but it's not one that you should really be using in, for example, when you're speaking, definitely not you're speaking. And if you were sending a work email, furthermore wouldn't really look appropriate. It's too academic in tone, and it would read a bit strange if you were sending a work email. Similar to furthermore, we have this word here, what's more. Yeah, so an example sentence for you guys. I've been fortunate to find a career that I love, and what's more, I get well paid for it. So the same as furthermore, we're using what's more to add information. It's a little bit different from furthermore because it adds emphasis at the same time. Yeah, so as well as building your argument, you've got that element of emphasizing your point. They are quite synonymous, yeah, but what's more could definitely be a word that you use in spoken English, okay? So it would work well in formal writing, but also it's one that you can bring into your speaking confidently too. Our next word that we have today, guys, is the word moreover. So your example sentence here, the source of the information is irrelevant. Moreover, the information need not be confidential. So we also use this, like the previous examples. Furthermore, what's more, we use this as a linker of addition. It's much more common than furthermore, okay? So it appears much more often, but not in spoken English. So it's a high frequency word in written English, much higher frequency than furthermore is, but not for speaking. Yeah, if you're speaking, we want to use the word what's more or the word also, okay? A great word which quite often gets forgotten about. Okay, so moreover is a synonym of furthermore, but it is less academic than that, all right? So here, if we have a look at the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, you'll see here, it says it's formal, it's in the top 2,000 written word frequency, okay? So it adds regularly. But if you compare that to when you look at furthermore, furthermore does not have this frequency, and it does add a note that it is a formal word, okay? So moreover is much more commonly used than furthermore, and a great one to bring into quite a lot of different kinds of more formal writing. Right, now we're going to look at this word thus here, guys. So there's your example. I wanted to spend some time with this because it tends to get misused quite a lot, right? So most of the evidence was destroyed in the fire, thus it would be almost impossible to prove him guilty. So we use thus to express a consequence. So you can imagine, instead of saying thus here, you could use the word consequently, okay? Or even so, right? And it's an interesting linker. Thus, if you check its frequency, it's actually quite a high frequency word, right? So look at this, it's in the top 3,000 written, yeah? So this sometimes leads to a lot of especially more advanced students using it. And especially, I'll see this with my students who are maybe working with academic texts in English, or that's kind of their focus, and their English is high, and that's the kind of stuff that they're reading a lot. However, here's an example of corpus. So if you just take a little second to read through some of those examples of corpus, have a look at those example sentences and think about how we're using thus. Okay. So if we look at those examples, did any of those examples look like any of these kinds of texts? Did any look like an email or an essay or a report or a proposal? Yeah? Have a look again at that. If we're thinking about these four kinds of very commonly tested kinds of writing in exams, the answer is not really, yeah? Okay, so thus is something that will appear in academia quite often. It might appear in older English, it's a bit more archaic. So it does have a high frequency because of that reason. but it's not something that would normally be used in an exam level essay, for example, proposal, so on. And it's not something that you would be using in a work email at all. Okay, it's not appropriate for that. So you may see the word thus, you don't really need to worry about it very much or use it in your own writing. Yeah. I would maybe use thus in a very like formal academic piece of work, but that's not what you're being asked to produce in your exam essays. Okay, so avoid it generally. Right, we're going to have a look at this word since here, guys, because it's another one that quite often is a bit confusing. So here's your example sentence. Since you are unable to answer, perhaps we should ask someone else. So this is used when we're giving the reason why someone decides to do something or decides that something is true. So you could substitute that there for the word because. Yeah. This can sometimes really confuse students, understandably, because we very often use the word since in relation to time, yeah? So it means from a particular time or event in the past until the present or in that period of time. We've been waiting here since 2 o'clock. You'll very often use it, see it used with present perfect structures. And understandably, it is really confusing when we have linkers that are very often used as time references, okay? So if you look at these two examples, though, they are very different. And this one, when we're using since to refer to time, it will be beside a time period. Since is a synonym, like I said, of the word because, okay? And that's why it's a really useful linker for you, and you should be confident using it in your writing. It's going to help you avoid repetition because the word because is one that comes up a lot. Yeah, so it's a great idea to have a sort of bank of linkers that you can use for these very commonly used words when we're constructing arguments. Since can go at the beginning or in the middle of a sentence. So for example, since it was raining, they took the decision to stay indoors, or they took the decision to stay indoors since it was raining. Okay, so both of these are exactly the same. Yeah, so make sure that you feel confident in how to use this one because it is really useful. Okay, next one, guys, we're looking at is nevertheless. Okay, so it was certainly a terrible accident. Nevertheless, air travel is still the safest form of transport. So nevertheless is a contrasting linker. Yeah, it's also a useful one to be able to use confidently, guys. You can be a bit more specific with nevertheless. So it used when saying something that seems different or surprising after your previous statement. So it's a little bit different to, I mean, it's the same function as however, but it's got a slightly different tone to however, because it's got this idea of something of a surprise or really highlighting a difference. Nevertheless can be at the beginning or at the end of a sentence, okay? And sometimes you'll see it used with the word but. And when it's used with but, when the two of them are combined, that's where it's really being used for emphasis. So for example, the Sharks played with 2 men in the penalty box, but nevertheless managed to score. Okay, I could take that nevertheless out of the sentence, it would still make sense. By adding it in, I'm emphasizing the idea of surprise. Okay. This is one, guys, that we use in written English. It's not one that you want to bring into your speaking. And you might also have seen the word nonetheless. It is entirely synonymous and interchangeable. Okay, so I could say here, but nonetheless managed to score. Yeah. Okay, moving on to therefore. So the car was bigger and therefore more comfortable. So we use this to express contrast, right? It is much more commonly used in written English. It can be used in spoken English, but we have much more common words that we would use rather than therefore. So you can see here the difference in the frequency, okay? So it's in the top 1,000 written frequency words, but it's in the top 3,000 spoken, okay? It's much more common in spoken English to use the word so, right? If I say it was late, therefore I didn't stay long, if I'm using that in my speaking, I sound extremely formal and quite unnatural, yeah? Whereas the normal word to bring in here would simply be so. Okay, and the last one we're talking about today, guys, with reference to or in reference to. I'm writing in reference to the job opening in your department. Yeah. So here I use this to explain what I am writing or talking about. But you'll see, guys, from that example that we've got at the top, this is something that we use in written letters. Yeah, okay? Especially in business letters, okay? So we very often use this at the start of a letter to explain the purpose of writing. Yeah, that should be out of all of your essays. Yeah, okay, and it should definitely not be used in your speaking. It is, however, a great little linker to use in any kind of formal email that you have to write. Given all of those words, yeah, let's see if you can do some practice. We have these 8 linkers we can use: furthermore, since, what's more, therefore, in regards to, nevertheless, moreover, and thus. Okay? Take 5 minutes, guys, and see if you can choose an appropriate linker from that list to put in those sentences. Some of them could have more than one option. Let's have a look at those answers. All right, so if we have a look at there, number 1, he was not qualified for the position and therefore did not get the job. Yeah. Number 2, since the train is delayed, we suggest waiting in the cafeteria. 3, Edinburgh is certainly a beautiful city, but it is nevertheless expensive. 4, a new library would be a vital addition to the community. Moreover, it would improve the cultural life of the city. Of course, here we could also use what's more. We could technically use furthermore, although the tone isn't the best one for furthermore. Yeah. Having peer reviewed the study, the evidence suggests it is positive. Furthermore, there was data which may offer a greater insight into the issue. So this is a good choice for number 5 because of the very academic tone of the example sentence, but you could also have used moreover or what's more in there, okay? The murder weapon was discovered at the accused's residence and thus he was found guilty by a jury of his peers. I'm writing in reference to the letter in last week's newspaper. And finally, access to an education is vital to allow for social mobility. What's more, it's an excellent way to improve a country's economy, or of course, moreover, or furthermore again. Okay, so I hope that was a helpful class for everyone. I have put, just to finish, I don't know if anyone's used this link before. I've put a direct link in Classrooms for you. But I don't know if you've heard of this software that Cambridge English have called Write and Improve. And it's a really, really cool little piece of software. It's free. And basically what you can do in Cambridge Write and Improve is that it's a writing software that they've developed for you to write in, and it will instantly feedback and let you know what level you're writing at, okay? And it's really great. You'll get immediately a framework on the Common European Framework of Reference. So it will tell you between A1 and C2 where you are. And it also shows you the areas of your text where you can probably improve a bit more in your writing, so you can do more work on it. So if you feel like doing some practice with these linkers that we've talked about today, I recommend going onto this website. Like I say, it's free to sign up. Have a go, see if it's useful for you. And do remember that the best way to improve your writing is to do it. Okay, so the more you practice, the better that it's going to get.